Hello, everybody. This is Signals and Insights, the podcast. I am Gabriel Velez, CEO of CrowdAnswer. This is the show where we sit down with the people shaping how businesses grow, sell, and make smarter decisions here in Insights and Market Research. My guest today is Maria Lucia Parra. Maria is also from Colombia. Maria is the founder and principal of Ingenium Research, a boutique market research firm that helps big brands actually understand the U.S. Hispanic consumer, a market of 62 million people and growing, and basically with more than 2 trillion dollars in buying power. And Maria has spent 25 years in this work, from Colombia to some of the multinational research firms in the country. And she just took the stage at the Las Vegas Insights Conference a few months ago to challenge how the whole industry thinks about this audience. Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Gabriel, for the invitation. Very excited about being here today.
Perfect. Let's talk a little bit about your background. It's better when you are the one that basically complete that. After 25 years in the industry, what is your understanding on the Hispanic consumer that still gets you fired up?
Yes, so that's a great question because I started my career in Latin America and I worked in Latin America for a research company for 6 years before moving to the United States. Before moving to the United States, for me, Hispanic wasn't just like or it was just like a term, but I didn't know before moving to the States that the Hispanic market was so important. When I moved to Cincinnati, where a lot of research happens because Procter & Gamble is there. For me, it was pretty easy to find a job because I was a researcher that was bilingual, fully bilingual, and that could talk to Hispanics, especially moderate groups in Spanish. At that time, I was hired as an expert on the Hispanic market, but I wasn't really an expert. I knew about Latin America, but I didn't know about the Hispanic market and why it was important and the acculturation levels and things like that. So at that point is when I started really learning about this market. And the first frustration I had when I started doing this is that we became a term. We are all Hispanics, regardless if you are Mexican, Colombian, Cuban, Argentinian. We were all the same. In Latin America, and I'm sure that you're very familiar with this, when you conduct research, you don't do research like, let's talk about Colombia. You don't do research only in Bogota. You have to do a research that includes at least Medellin or Cali. Sometimes we replace those two, and Barranquilla. Those three big markets, if not four, if they have the budget, are completely different. If we are doing a regional project, it's not only Colombia. We have to include Mexico. When I started my career, Venezuela was a very important market. But then I came here, and I was supposed to have all Hispanics in one group, which was for me frustrating at the beginning. Then I started understanding this better. Of course, because of budgets, we cannot have one group with Colombians, one group with Mexicans, one group with Puerto Ricans. Definitely, we can't. But also, for me now, Hispanics is more like an additional country of Latin America. When we move here, we start adjusting to another culture. I try to avoid the term acculturate, and we will talk about that later, but we start adjusting to a new culture. We start getting different habits compared to what we had in Latin America. So we start building like a new, different Hispanic culture inside our own culture. And in that way, I can consider more like we are doing research with the Hispanics that are like a different country inside the United States, more than the Colombians, the Puerto Ricans, or the Mexicans. And it's been 20 years now understanding this market. It's been evolving over the past 20 years. Like initially, I was special because I was able to moderate in Spanish, and most of the research happening with Hispanics were in Spanish. Then the biculturals or bilingual were more important, and being able to moderate in Spanglish or being able to navigate between two languages became important. And nowadays, sometimes many of the research that we conduct with Hispanics is in English, because if we look at the population, more than 50% of the population are in the middle, are the ones that are more like a second or third generation of Hispanics that many times are more comfortable speaking in English than in Spanish, even though the culture is still very important. So just thinking about language is the way that is being changing. And also budgets. Like 20 years ago, it was very common to have a research with Hispanics only that included 15, 20 focus groups, in-depth interviews across the country, shop-alongs, you name it. Now, if we're lucky, we have a few. Sometimes clients, when they don't have the budget, maybe one Hispanic within a group, but no those big projects that we used to have in the past.
That's great. Thank you. And I think that you have been learning along of this process and helping clients also to navigate around that. So I want to hear your thoughts about how do you feel the clients right now navigating and understanding the Hispanic groups. I imagine that some clients are more advanced on the understanding and maybe some industries as well. If you can guide us through, some examples or some ideas, so what do you feel about what is already had been achieved and what is still missing from clients to understand, the nuances of this population?
I think it's a permanent battle. There are ups and downs. There are times where everyone is paying attention to Hispanics and everyone wants to allocate budget to Hispanics, especially before a Hispanic Heritage Month or specific times. And there are times when they need to cut budgets, that the first thing that is always cut is the Hispanic research, the Hispanic marketing. Past, I would say, 2 years, it's been a lot of fear about the current political situation, that sometimes what I think is more a fear from the client than the Hispanics itself. And going back to what I already mentioned, that many of the Hispanics, and the most important, not the most important one, the one that is growing the most and the biggest right now, they are second or third generation Hispanics. So there is not much fear within that segment. However, if we want to include Hispanics that are more like a first generation, yeah, there's certain fear, but there are ways to conduct the research. It's not that we cannot do it. It's just that we definitely, and I would recommend that regardless the situation is, we need to partner with Hispanic recruiters that have the relation with those respondents, so they know that this is research, that nothing is going to happen to them. Try to avoid doing things at the Hispanic households, because many are not comfortable having people coming to their household right now. Even going to focus group facilities, if they're not familiar with this, they won't feel comfortable going to focus group facilities. But it's still doable. I think that the fear is more coming from the clients that do not know what's happening or how Hispanics are feeling, that with the Hispanics itself. Like, I've been conducting research for the past 2 years and I have excellent show rates, but of course it's a Hispanic recruiter calling them, it's a Hispanic moderator. I make sure that they feel comfortable. I always say, I have to record, it's just because I won't be able to take notes, but this is not going to be posted. If you don't feel comfortable recording, we won't record. If I ask questions that you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to answer anything. So it's also the way that you do it. That's one of the things that I have seen. And also the budgets. Right now, budgets are not, like, Hispanics are not the first thing that clients want to do. A lot of changes inside companies. And what I have seen lately is that all these big corporations that have been my clients for years are the ones that are doing less research with Hispanics today. But there are also smaller companies, advertising agencies that want to better understand the Hispanic market, or companies that are from Latin America that want to start doing business here with Hispanics, that are beginning to do more research here in the States.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. And let's talk about this idea that you come with the cultural affinity versus acculturation. Yeah, you have got this idea at the center of your work that the industry should move past or call acculturation, which is basically measuring how assimilated someone is by their language and how long they had been in the country, and toward what you call cultural affinity. What do you mean by cultural affinity? Maybe you already responded, but yeah.
Yeah, so we always talk about acculturation. And initially, I remember when I first started doing Hispanic, we were talking about the Spanish dominant, English dominant, and bilingual. That's the way that we were segmenting Hispanics. Then we start hearing more about bicultural, Hispanic dominant, US dominant. And then you see that each company has a different model that at the end is pretty similar, but with different fancy names many times. But always, before realizing that it was more like the way that we were doing research, I always had issues while we were recruiting with some specific respondents. Many times the recruiter calling me and telling me, I am inviting this person to this group, but based on the screener, like, let's say this Hispanic woman, she's in LA, she's been in the States for more than 20 years. Based on this, she's supposed to participate in the bicultural group, but that group is going to be conducted in English, but she doesn't speak any English. She's completely fluent in Spanish and doesn't speak English. So what should I do with her? So of course, no. So she's more like the in the unacculturated group, so let's put her on that group. Things like that, or having participants that once I start talking to them and they are completely fluent in Spanish, they said that they are a second or third generation of Hispanics living in Texas. So they were supposed to be recruiting another group, but they were actually in the unacculturated group. There were always issues like those. And I was attending a conference a couple of years ago. I was having dinner with some clients, and one client from these companies that have been doing research with Hispanics always, she started saying, it's because we need to start talking about acculturation and we need to talk about cultural affinity. And that's a different topic. And at that point, I realized, yes, because we always been thinking about that acculturation is tied to years in the United States and language preference, which in many times it is, but not necessarily, because then we go to these specific cases where it's been in the States for many years, but still completely connected to the culture. Or it's been, depending on sometimes in your educational level or how you immigrate, you've been in the States for a few years, but you are not interacting with the culture anymore. The culture is not important anymore. So instead of having these screeners where we only ask about years in the States and language preference, we need to better understand how connected is the person with the culture. We'd also answer many questions that sometimes we have after conducting our research and the client says, I didn't see any different than what I learned from the general market. So what's the reason we're spending more money understanding Hispanics? And it's because we were not necessarily recruiting the people the right way. Like if we want to understand the culture, we need to understand how attached that person is in the culture and then understand the insights and the differences across those segments. But then depending on that cultural affinity, then depending on the English dominance of that person. So
That
the
makes
reason, and
sense.
I started, and we decided to do like an internal research to identify these segments. And yes, they are similar to the traditional acculturation model, but they are not only tied to the language and to the years in the United States. And then I started realizing that there are other big corporations that were already there. So not many, as you asked a few minutes ago, not all of them are there. Those are the corporations that have been doing research with Hispanics for many years, for at least 20 years, the ones that are already there as well.
Yeah, I connect with you 100%, right? When I see commercials talking about Cinco de Mayo and burritos, um, yeah, I mean, and Mexicans don't celebrate Cinco de Mayo. They don't eat
No.
burritos. Um, and for me, it's a little bit difficult, right? And sometimes when also they try to talk to affluent Hispanics or educated Hispanic the same way that they talk with general Hispanic, and it's difficult because it's in a disconnection. It's a disconnection in there. And then my question for you, when a big brand comes to you and say, we want to understand Hispanic consumers, how do you actually get past the surface to get real insights? What's your process?
Well, the first thing is that I need to do partner every stage of the process with people like me that are experts in their field. Like the way that we work is I am the researcher, but I don't take care of the recruiting, or I am not a panel provider. So even if it's a qual or a quant, if I'm working, if the project includes a quant, it cannot be any panel and the one that I am working with to find to do the fieldwork and find the respondents. It has to be one that understands Hispanics and also have within the panel a representative panel of the Hispanic population. Same with the qualitative piece. With the recruiters, it has to be Hispanic recruiters. So we have the real respondents that we need. That when when they participate is exactly what we are looking for. And also, as I mentioned, we added this cultural screener that is not only asking about language preference, but asking more questions about the culture to really understand how are we going to recruit this person if we are doing the groups with only this respondent. Another thing that we do, because happens a lot, is that the clients do not have enough budget. So that's not the point when I recommend. If you don't have the budget and there is no way we can go and talk to the three big segments that we have of cultural affinity, let's go only with the ones that are in the middle, because it's the most important one and it's the one that is navigating between two cultures.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And yeah, sometimes as you mentioned, budget is a restriction. I was, surprised that, for example, to the FIFA World Cup, I watched the games through an app. I think was Telemundo on the TV, and basically they transmit all the games in Spanish and also with advertising. But for to my surprise, basically I saw that the commercial were just I think, two or three advertisers during the whole time. It was crazy. You compare this against, the US tennis or football, and you see, plenty of advertisers. In this case, no, I don't know why. What your thoughts around that? I was, very, very surprised and concerned, because at the end of the day, it's a very big population, very engaged at the time, and just watching these two commercial throughout, the whole championship was a little bit sad.
It is, and it's what has been happening all the time. Like, I think that even though it's a huge Hispanic market, like for me, it's the third big. Like, if Hispanics were a country, it's the third biggest market after Mexico and Brazil. It's still huge. But the buying power is huge. But I think that compared to the general population, it's still not that big, even though it's growing. It's more than 20% now. I think that is still not considered that important, and it's still the perception that I only have to do this a couple of times. It's something that every time I talk at conferences, it's not only about being present during Cinco de Mayo, which is not an important one, or during Hispanic Heritage Month. That is something that is more like a marketing strategy, because September is nothing for us as Hispanics. It's more about present during those important cultural moments and how to do it. But the companies are not there yet. They just think that maybe throwing a few cents here or here or here, then that's all we need.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I had the same frustration that you had. I didn't see. It was a huge moment. Like, soccer is the most important sport that is across all the population. Even Venezuela wasn't present there, but Venezuelans were following everything. Uh, it was here. It was in the United States, and it was the moment to really start engaging, because it was not the only one. It was a good moment to start creating that relationship with Hispanics, and it was completely a missed
Lost.
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep.
100%. Let's talk about positive things. I will love a real story here. Maybe can you walk me through a time seeing people, or seeing a client that basically saw people throughout like an affinity lens that changed the way that a brand actually did? Basically, a big insight that changed the way how brands behave with consumers. And of course, if you want, to just share the category because, privacy or something, it's fine. But we would like to know your thoughts based on your experience, because I know that you may have some good examples here.
There are different ones, but one where the clients find that easily, and of course, it's because of the category, is especially with healthcare or insurance in general, or financial services, mostly related to services, because insights that they always find, especially with newer immigrants, but in general, but with newer immigrants, is the need of more support from the companies, from financial services, more education on financial services, more support. Healthcare, same thing, or health insurance. All those categories require more presence of the company and more support and more guidance. And especially with healthcare, and especially with clients that talk more about heart disease and obesity and things like that, those are types of categories where they need to be more present, and where Hispanics need more support because of language barriers, because there is less education, because they need more guidance. Those are the ones that once they start doing the research and see all the gaps that are there and all the opportunities to connect, they get more involved than a CPG company that they think they are still are going to buy my brand. But what I have seen with CPG companies and with groceries sometimes is when they realize that this is not only about language. Like, it's not about communicating in Spanish or in English. Of course, Spanish is key. Like, always, every time you talk to Hispanics, you are going to hear, I speak English, I'm fluent in English, I feel more comfortable in English, but my mom or my grandmother doesn't speak Spanish, English, so it's still important to have it in Spanish. Like, that's part of, like, Spanish is acknowledgement of the culture. But for them, like, we were doing these interviews, and we had this respondent that everyone was assuming that this respondent was a unacculturated Hispanic, because everything was conducted in Spanish, all the homework, like we are doing a bulletin board, so everything he was sending one was in Spanish. And once we have the interview, because he was a great respondent and we were selecting the best respondents to conduct some interviews, we realized that he was a second generation Hispanic that was born in Texas, but the culture he was more connected to the culture than me or than anyone that moved 10 years ago to the States. So it's when they realize I could connect with this respondent in English, and that's completely fine. He's more fluent. Maybe if we have the conversation in English, he's even more fluent. But it's about it's about finding that culture and connecting with this person through cultural values just for language. It's when you get those type of respondents and you can get those cultural cues when they realize this is not only about translating, it's not only about having this advertising in Spanish in this specific media, it's about connecting with the culture and knowing how to do it.
Yeah, and going deeper, of course, requires some sort of process, right? um, because we change behaviors depending on the context, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
had a I had an example, and I wrote an article about a couple of months ago with the political campaign, and regardless your political view, from Espriella in Colombia. For me, is the best not political, the best marketing and advertising campaign I have seen in years. And what I keep saying is that they were not they were using emotions that are already there and enhance those emotions to connect with the people. Just one layer. Like it's just that they were able to connect with Hispanics in a completely emotional moment related to we were ready to start the World Cup. So soccer is important in the way that we are all together and unite, and where there are no differences when there is a Colombian game or if it's in Mexico, but when there is a soccer game, and how proud you feel when you wear your T-shirt from your country, and then adding all these values. It's a way when the client is able to identify, but in a natural way, all these values, all these things that connect you with the culture, and use it in the right way, is when you can win the consumer, similar to what they did with that campaign.
yeah. At the end, you connect throughout emotions, and we can talk about politics and how emotions are used, and they're gonna be a topic of
Of
another
ours.
another podcast. Yeah, because most of the time they basically raise like a negative emotions like fear and anger, and it's rare, or it's a little bit more rare, win the battle with a happiness and with a positive
Exactly.
emotion,
And
because
pride.
exactly the positive emotion is a little bit softer, and it doesn't basically create that tension as the negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, it's a good example on how emotions can basically move and motivate people the long term. And Maria, let me shift gears here and ask you how you usually get your best clients. What is the best method basically people get through you to work and get your services?
It's been present all the time and active all the time. So over the past years, I've been trying to be at conferences when I am invited. Unfortunately, it's not always what it happens. As you can see, many conferences do not have any Hispanic topic at all. Sometimes there is just one and or two at the most, but most of the times it's just one Hispanic speaker talking about something that is related to Hispanics, and is not the most popular one either. But I try to still be very active and be present at conference as much as I can, trying to provide content in LinkedIn or through newsletters with clients. Being present all the time is the best way to do it. Instead of trying to get business, I'm trying is to provide information. So if I am providing information, is where I'm trying to show clients that I am an expert and I can help them with that, instead of sending an email like, do you need help? Yes, they might need help, and eventually they will need help, but it's more about providing that information and those tools that they need to. Like for me, the reason why I started going to conferences and talking at conferences is because I realized we need to educate the people about the importance of the Hispanic market. You don't know what you don't know. So many times what's happening, that they're not doing the research, they're not present during the World Cup because they don't know the importance of this. They don't know that is 20% of the population, the size of the population. So it's more about bringing that education.
That's great. So this is a personal connection, but of course generate this emotional side that we were talking previously, and also
Yeah.
a layer of educate the audience, right? To the
Mm-hmm.
nuances that basically we are discussing right now. That's great. Maria, let's talk about a little bit the topic that everybody is talking about, like AI specifically. Where would you say your own firm is on the curve right now? And what's the area that you feel like you should be doing more but haven't cracked yet?
I use AI on a daily basis. I don't know how many times per day. I think that is a great tool. It's been evolving in seconds. Like every time you use it, it's getting better and better. For me, it's a personal assistance. We need to know how to use it, when to use it. Is not. I don't think it's replacing us. Not, at least not yet. But it's part of the process, and I think that it got on the. It's like the timing was perfect because research a few years ago, everything became that we need this for yesterday. Like we used to have projects where we have 2 or 3 weeks weeks to write a report. That doesn't exist anymore. Like not even a week. Many times it's just a few hours to send a report. The stations and everything is taken very, very, very quickly. So AI is helping us to expedite that process for qual or for quant. I started using AI for quant, so instead of with the open-ended answers, instead of coding those, I started using the AI, and I was impressed. Like with the first project that I did using AI to code the open-ended questions, I was doing a project that had initially a qualitative phase and then this quantitative phase, different teams and everything. And the answers that we collected from the open-ended were like the top line from my qualitative phase. Like the depth that we got from there was impressive. And we only need like a couple of clicks. Like it took us like an hour to get this. Like compared to years ago, coding will take 2 or 3 days for depending on the size of the sample and things like that. I start with quant and then more with qual, but it's more like an assistance. Like I do it like, for instance, after moderating groups, we use it internally to start creating the top line or even the full report and to help me identify the verbatims more quickly. But we review every single verbatim. Like once the verbatims are there, okay, show me exactly on the transcript where is that. Show me exactly the minutes. Many times they are there. Many times they come back saying, oh, well, no, actually that wasn't a verbatim for those groups, but we were summarizing. And so then we need to go back. So it's still, we need a human right there comparing what is there. It's like working with someone else. Like it's just an assistance that is helping you to expedite the process, but it's not replacing it. However, with Hispanics, I think that we are still behind. Like it's helping me to summarize the results in general, but the tool doesn't understand the culture yet. Like it doesn't understand because it doesn't understand the context, and many times, and also like the cultural affinity, well, even less. But it doesn't understand this is coming from a Mexican, and the Mexican has this background, or this is coming from a Cuban, and the Cuban has this background. It doesn't understand if it's a second or a third generation. It doesn't understand how you are connected with the culture. It's giving you like the big trends, but it's not understanding Hispanics or acculturation or cultural affinity yet.
Yeah, 100%, right? I mean, if you talk with a PhD person, basically they had been learning this for 30 years, right? AI right now has 2 years, and it's logical that basically things are still in improving. And on my conversations with other, especially with qualitative owners and leaders, they share your same opinion. You know, the lack of ability of AI to connect the dots, that at the end it's something that require experience, understanding, because no AI will be able to basically understand what is missing there, the culture, the relationships. There are so many things happening in different layers, and only
Mm-hmm.
a true researchers with experience. That's why you mentioned about recruiting recruiters that needs to be Hispanics as well, able to understand what is going on, right? And I
Exactly.
think AI will need more time to learn that. And the other problem, or the other thing that we have right now, is myriad of tools that do almost the same, and sometimes researcher a little bit lost on, hey, why this is better than the other, because it's too many options right now. And I
There are
think
too many.
we need a clearer, a C in order to be able to identify how we can get more from those tools. And I 100% with you that at the center of this should be the human and then we need to be ready for that. And from the client's perspective, what do you feel? You feel the clients right now are more open, or they're still a little bit conservative when you mention, hey, I use AI to transcribe, or I use AI to run the first analysis? What are your thoughts around that?
I think in general, most of the people right now are open to use it, especially because of that, because you can do it faster. Um, so you can have a report faster than we used to have it. But we still have to be very careful which ones we use. And for instance, for me, for research purposes, it's basically with tools that are for research and for qualitative research, not any tool. And also, even with that, I try to compare within tools because sometimes each of them have like a different point of view. But most of the clients, I think that are already there, and they understand that it helps us to expedite the process, especially when time is important.
That's perfect. Maria, what recommendation will you give to clients who started to do Hispanic research, but they are still not like being the experts, right? What do you recommend to them in terms of focus, or what they should try to do more, yeah, in order to be more successful on their activities?
What I would recommend is not just one research what they have to do. They have to, it's something that has to be part of the culture. So it's not just that we conduct the research today and in 5 years maybe we conduct another one. No, for every stage of the process, if they are doing research, Hispanic needs to be included, because every time, like, we need to continue learning, and depending on the objectives and depending what they need to do, it has to be part of the process. Like as in marketing, like same happens with research. Like with marketing, we say it's not only that you appear in September, you need to appear all year round. Same with research. It has to be always part of the research, even if it's a small piece of the research. And the other thing that I always recommend is partner with Hispanic experts. Not because you're going to conduct the research in English that is doable depending on what Hispanics you want to talk to. You can do everything through the general market agency, because the general market agency might do not know or do not have the expertise on Hispanics and might not be able to identify those insights that a Hispanic expert could identify.
Perfect. And yeah, let me ask you, 25 years in, you're still doing this. What keeps you in it? What wakes you up every day?
I love it. Like, I am a researcher. Like most of the people that you talk to and talk about marketing research, they always say, I ended up being in marketing research because of this, because of this. I decided to pursue a degree in psychology is because I wanted to work in marketing research. So it's always what I always wanted to do. Like, I like it psychology, but more about understanding the mind of how people purchase things, or how, like for instance, when I was still at college, I did something that was related to how advertising influences how you perceive a brand. And I was like in the last year of college. It's always it's my passion. It's been always like that. Um, love talking to people, so I still love moderating. Like, I write reports and love the reports and everything related to that, but I love it more when I am the one that moderated the group, because being a psychologist, I'm about people, talking to people, understanding people, observing the people, and seeing how this has evolved. For like 25 years ago, our reports were even, yeah, PowerPoint, but just text, not visuals. 30 pages? No, at least 50 or 100 pages. Now it's just like a few pages, very visual, where you can still get the insight that you need, but you don't need extended report that nobody's going to read, only you and your boss, and maybe the first day that you present that to the people that were there. So seeing that how we have evolved from those long and boring reports to things that are more visual, that people can digest better, and even using these tools, like when I started doing this, everything of course was in person. I started to do virtual years before the pandemic. I would say at least 10 or more years ago, and I tried to convince clients that for specific objectives, virtual was great, and nobody believed until the pandemic came. And then we realized that there are many things that we can do. I still think that there are many things that are better in person, but virtual also help us a lot to do the things faster, because instead of traveling for 2 weeks, you can do things in 3 or 4 days, and that's it. Let's move to the report. So seeing that evolution from and also we have also seen that maybe we don't need 20 focus groups. Maybe with 10 good groups going in depth, it's fine. So seeing that evolution, it's always different, and I always enjoy new tools. I love technology. I love all the new tools. What I do think is that one size doesn't fit all. So it all depends on the objective. Like, but for some objectives, this video tool where you can collect insights in 2 seconds with just one recording from the client, from the respondent, that doesn't replace focus groups. It's just that depending on the question that the client has, maybe that's a great tool. But for this other one, maybe a journal. But this one, so I always like to play around, and with qualitative, that's a good thing about qualitative, because we can play around what's better and be creative also depending on the objectives of the client. So that's what wakes me up every day, because it's fascinating how we can play around with qualitative research, and there is no single project. And I have conducted, I don't even know how many in 25 years, and I don't think that there is one that is completely exactly the same as the other one. Every single project is different.
Maria, thank you very much. I feel your passion. This has been a great conversation, and the way you frame it, that you can understand 62 million people just by the language they speak. That's great to hear, right? So it's really sharp. Where people can find you and Ingenium if they want to learn more and reach you.
You can find me on LinkedIn. I try to be very active in LinkedIn, and also I have my website. You can also find my information on my website, but I tend to be very active in LinkedIn.
That's great. And yeah, that's a wrap on this one. Huge thanks to Maria for pushing all of us to things past the easy labels and understand a little bit more. Try to understand a little bit more the nuances of the Hispanic, right? That is basically one name, but really covers many different facets that sometimes it's very hard to untangle if you don't follow the right guidance. So yeah,
Exactly.
I appreciate that. If you got something of it, do me a favor, hit subscribe, drop a comment, say like, and yeah, we're looking forward to see you on the next episode of Signals and Insights. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.